Let's be real, we all need to take a break from alcohol. Luckily, Athletic Brewing offers award-winning, great-tasting NA beers for any occasion. Take a break from alcohol with something that tastes great, from their easy-drinking Athletic Light to something a bit more hoppy with Free Wave, or even something dark and bold like All Out. Try Athletic Brewing today by going to unitedwedrink.com/athletic and enjoy free shipping on all orders over $50. That's unitedwedrink.com/athletic. Athletic Brewing. Beer fit for all times. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour, more like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich. Happy fucking New Year to you all. With me, as always, is Kevin Abbott and Tim Johnson.
I just want to point out that if Larry David is to be believed, or his show Curb Your Enthusiasm, you can no longer say Happy New Year. The point has passed. I think he said like a week. It's like a week after New Year's. You can still say Happy New Year's. So you're not allowed to say that. We've been gone too long.
Fair enough. As long as I'm. But what about the writing the wrong year on my checks? Because I write so many checks, and I sometimes still write 2024.
I know that's like a joke to you, but I literally write tons of checks for the brewery, and I am painfully writing 2024. I've had to cancel scribble out like 3 or 4 checks at this point.
I think banks give you a 1-month grace period on that.
Oh, is that true?
I think they do. For some reason, I have the capabilities to look this up in front of me, but I'm not going to.
No, I'd rather just go with what you think. I think we should do less Googling and more just doing. That sounds right. Sounds great.
We don't have fact checkers anymore. Someone can community note me, and then that's that.
I actually write 1997 on all my checks because that's just wishful thinking of the time when I would much rather start my entire life over.
97, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The day after my high school graduation is when I'd start life over.
This money got me a lot further back then.
I would not like to go back to 1997 because I would be mercilessly being made fun of in high school. So I reject your idea. If you get the opportunity via some kind of time warp to reset to 1997, I beg you not to.
Okay. So what year would you like me to go back to start things over with? 99?
That's when I graduated. Things did start to get better at that point.
Okay, let's go 99. So Jeannie grants me 3 wishes. Mike, this is exactly where you wanted this podcast to go.
Exactly.
Totally hijacking it. It's just going to be Kevin and Tim's.
I asked a genie to grant me the wish of doing this conversation in the podcast. So perfect.
That is a spin-off of the show, is the Tim and Kevin buddy comedy where we meet up back in 1999 and come up with all these great ideas for craft beer and get them out way ahead of time and just do nothing positive because nothing good would come of that. But still.
It's like an even worse hot tub time machine.
Would the version of this also have Olivia Wilde and Ron Livingston in it? Was that who was in there? Or was that Jack Johansson? I can't remember. The Drinking Buddies movie.
Oh, Drinking Buddies was Olivia Wilde, Jake Johansson.
Okay. For some reason, I get him and Ron Livingston.
Jake Johnson.
Jake Johnson. Okay.
Jake
I get
Johnson,
him
Olivia
and Ron Livingston
Wilde,
confused
Ron
all the time.
Livingston, Anna Kendrick.
Wait, Ron Livingston is in that movie too?
Well, Anna Kendrick is. Jake Johnson is. Olivia Wilde is. I think. Isn't it Ron Livingston?
I guess.
Who's the fourth?
No, don't Google it. Don't Google it. Let's just say
Yeah,
it's Ron
that's true.
Livingston.
Okay. I think
It's
it's.
right-
I think it's. Ed Asner and
and
yeah.
Ron Livingston Siegel. That's who it is, and that's now
Gary
we can start-
Cole.
Now
and,
we can
and
start
Michael
the show.
Bolton.
Michael Bolton.
All right, so
Wow, this is a good start
first
to the new
episode
year, guys.
of
Good
the new year.
year.
What are you guys drinking? Because I'm doing dry January, so I'm having an NA, the Trail Pass IPA from Sierra Nevada.
I'm not drinking anything, but I am eating some pasta.
What are you
You
drinking?
could drink it
Sledge?
too.
What are
Just
you
put it
eating?
in the blender.
Yeah, I suppose I could. No, honestly, I've been all about using egg noodles for my pasta lately, and I made this pretty fancy homemade pasta sauce that I've been really happy with. And I decided to just rehydrate some egg noodles and some dehydrated ground beef and put in this pasta sauce and some mozzarella, and kind of all I need for tonight.
Rehydrated egg noodles. So you mean you boiled them?
Well, technically, when you make noodles like that, then they're hydrated, and then you dehydrate them, and then you rehydrate them.
I have never heard anyone call cooking pasta rehydrating them, but
That's all you're doing.
maybe it's a Midwest thing.
It's no, it's just what you're doing.
It just makes it sound way more fancy. It makes it sound like you're doing molecular gastronomy.
So this is some rehydrated egg noodles.
This is a rehydrated fettuccine in a egg cream sauce. You're making carbonara, you fuck.
I mean, you're taking noodles, you're dehydrating them, and then you're boiling them. All you're doing is rehydrating them.
With a slow simmered tomato bisque.
I would have said gastrique, but that's fine.
Okay, so Mike is drinking an NA beer. Tim is drinking nothing. He is eating pasta. I am drinking because, someone has to keep this podcast honest and also be completely unhealthy. I'm drinking a Hofbrau Delicator.
Oh, nice.
This is a great fucking beer.
I don't think I've ever heard of that before. It's I guess they're Doppelbock.
It's a Doppelbock. It is so up until a couple of years ago, I think it was like winter special or something like that. It's one of those beers that was named one thing in the States and another thing in Europe. And it was like Delicator in Europe, but it was something else in the States. I can't remember what it was, but really, really good. It's fantastic. I love this beer. I'm drinking through some of my old Christmas beers that I'm not planning on holding on to until next Christmas.
Was this also an Old Favorite Friday beer?
You know it, my friend. Thanks for the plug.
That is nice.
So, I guess since Kevin is the only one drinking, he will be our test subject for our topic of talking about the Surgeon General saying that alcohol and cancer have a pretty close correspondence to one another. So sorry, Kevin.
Well, no, don't worry, Kevin. I did just DoorDash some liquor, so there is something coming on my way.
And I also believe that all of us have drank in the past and do plan to drink sometime in the future. So we're all gonna die.
Irrelevant.
Oh no. What is coming to my door in like 22 minutes is the very first thing I've ever had to drink.
It's you're re-drinking the thing that you had was the first thing that you ever drank. Is that what you're saying?
I don't.
So you're having Mickey's.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I don't think Juice Force is the first thing I ever drank in my life. So,
are you getting some tall boys?
being on a podcast with you, and you're such a fanboy, I had to do something.
You don't have to do anything for me except for you're
Oh God,
supposed to be
no,
keeping
no.
time of this episode, and I forgot to remind you about
Oh
that.
shit, you're
Uh,
right. I should
but
write some shit down. Let me see if I
um,
can reach a pen and a piece of paper. This
doing
is
it the
off.
old school way.
2025 is off to a banger of a start, gentlemen.
That I think that is what it is. If I check the lunar calendar, this is the year of the bang, which is in correlation to Diamond Dallas Page. But that's
Is there even a place where I have a timestamp on here? I don't know how this
no,
works.
no. You would have had to keep a timer of your own. But that is neither here nor there.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll remember that for next episode then, I guess.
Yeah. Kevin's already pouring his second beer. It looks like. Was that chocolate stout or chocolate?
Experiment continues.
Oh yeah, I saw that variety pack. I didn't pick it up.
I picked this up. Well, first of all, Old Fezziwig was in it. This is the oaked vanilla porter, but I picked it up because you mentioned you saw it, and
I did. Oh, okay.
you just said on the show that you'd seen it, and I wanted to get some Fezziwig, and this oaked vanilla porter from Sam Adams is pretty good.
Oh, so we're just a curb podcast now. Okay.
And I've actually never watched an episode of that show.
Oh, really? Oh.
Really?
And the reason is that it is so cringe. Like I get embarrassed for people on the screen and can't watch things. Like
Oh yeah.
I cannot watch Friends. First of all, it's a terrible show. But secondly, there's so many awkward moments in that show that I have to like cover my eyes and my ears because it's too embarrassing for me. And there's so much of that going on in Curb that is objectively funny. I mean, that's a hilarious show, not a garbage show like Friends. But I can't watch it. It just physically hurts me.
Yeah, no, I there are some shows like I had a hard time with like the first 2 seasons of The Office.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
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 The really
Like,
bad Steve Carell years. Yeah.
oh God, where you were just like, I could just like my chest tightened up just watching how uncomfortable and just awkward and just, like if you're an empath, or if you just are not a robot, I think really sometimes just being able to feel that like gross emotion.
I am a robot and I still have a hard time with it. I think we should talk about the unhealthy nature of the business that we have all made money off of. And I was just very interested in talking about this because legitimately one of my partners walked into my office a week and a half ago and basically said, if the Surgeon General puts a warning on our cans that says this causes cancer, i.e., what cigarette packs say in this country, what the hell are we going to do? And what's that going to mean for our industry? And we had a long conversation about it. And there's some things that we're planning on doing in the future. But I was like, we should talk about that. We should talk about what this means for our industry. Now, by the way, I don't think it's actually going to happen. There's a new administration, I believe, coming in like 5 minutes. And they're not really big on regulation. So I don't think that's going to be a priority. But it does really bring up that question about the long-term viability of the alcohol industry, how it's going to be perceived, because this was something on a lot of people's radars.
Yeah. So
I can just put this to bed in 5 minutes if you want. We can just wrap this thing up.
Go ahead, Tim.
Sure. I have some friends to watch. I mean, not friends.
We never come to any conclusions or solve anything, so this will be a first for the new year. Please do it.
Okay. So, when I was at B-Dubs, astute listeners of the podcast and or Eric Hild will know that I used to work at the headquarters of Buffalo Wild Wings. OG listener, and does OG mean only, but still. When I was at the headquarters of Buffalo Wild Wings is when the Affordable Care Act went through. And as part of the Affordable Care Act, we learned that we had to start putting calories on menus. And franchisees were freaking out. And people were freaking out. And I even remember, like, the son of the CEO came up to me and he was like, my friends aren't going to eat here anymore because the calorie counts are too high. You know how many customers Buffalo Wild Wings lost because of that? One?
Just the ones that died.
I kind of think about it with like the Surgeon General's warning on cigarettes, as you brought up. People didn't quit smoking because the side of the package said something. They started to quit smoking, well, A, because they finally learned about the health. They didn't learn about the health because they read it on the side of a box. If I believed everything I read on the side of the box, then I am the captain of Captain Crunch Universe because I made it to the end of the maze. Like, that's not how
Nice
that
to meet
shit.
you, Captain.
Yeah, that's not how that works. The other thing was that they taxed the fuck out of cigarettes, and people went, Jesus Christ, I can't even afford to smoke. Because I do not believe that any warning on the side of anything, right? Like, I don't know anyone who has picked up a beer, read the side of it, it says, do not operate heavy machinery, and went, oh, I guess I shouldn't operate this forklift now, and put it off to the side. I don't know any pregnant woman that has gone, oh, it says I shouldn't drink this while pregnant, and put it off to the side. I think warnings, and I think a lot of this all points to the fact that, yeah, you put it on there to satisfy a regulation. I'm not worried about it. I don't think it's going to matter. The calorie count didn't matter because I don't think consumers go, oh man, here's this thing I know is bad for me, right? Like, I remember one time my friend left her cigarettes out on the porch during a humid part of the year, and there was some tiny little like mold on the filter of her cigarette. She pulled it over to me. She goes, do you think that's safe to smoke? And I said, it's a cigarette. No. I don't think it is. I think people that are consuming things like alcohol, like tobacco, I have a hard time believing in the year of our Lord, Josh Groban, 2025, that anyone doesn't know what they're like. You know, when people are concerned about. Sorry, a lot more we can get into. I'm gonna cut myself off there because I don't want to like bury the lead here too much. But thoughts.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, and I think what you're saying is really, really interesting, and I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying. But because I have so many thoughts, I think Mike, you have to jump in with anything because I feel like I'm going to talk for 20 minutes. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, I agree with a lot of the sentiment that Tim put out there. Uh, it's funny because when he was talking specifically about the calorie thing, like you were like, I have something to say about this.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that impacted restaurants. It didn't impact me very much because like I'm not trying to sound high and mighty, but a lot of the restaurants that I frequent did not fall under the ones that needed to do this. It's for like locations businesses that have like more than 10 locations or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, every once in a while I go to a Miller's Ale House and I see the calorie counts listed there on the menu, and it does sometimes cause me to be like, maybe I'll have this instead of this. But when it comes to like packaging for a product that we already know in excess is bad for you, I don't think that it's going to have a big impact on sales by itself. I do kind of see it as one of those. It's okay. It's another warning to put on there. I'm losing some real estate on design that I can put onto my packaging, but like look at the Prop 65 stuff in California. Like practically everything in California has to have a Prop 65 warning put associated with it because has something that could potentially cause cancer. And the fact that it was never put to alcohol already in California is kind of funny. But um, I I think it would be a bummer just from an aesthetic standpoint to have to put another uh, warning on there, especially with like we have printed cans that are going to last us for like another year, like for a couple of our brands, and like hey, we aren't going to be able to get those redone for a while, and that is still a process that needs to be done. That's takes a while. So
Well, and there will be a grace period, like any of these things, right? Like,
yes,
yeah.
for sure.
And it's important to say if this happens, which it
Yes.
probably won't.
No.
I think I honestly don't think it's going to happen. But I sorry, I had to clear my throat there. I want to go on record as saying I am in agreement with Tim specifically because he really was like kind of hammering home the idea that this is probably not going to be that big of a deal. I also kind of agree with that. But a couple of the things that you said that I had not considered at all, the calorie counts for one, I thought that's a great point. I wonder though, I mean, chain restaurants like Buffalo Wild Wings and Applebee's and other
Mhm.
places that they're dying. They've been dying for a long time.
Yeah,
Now,
but they're not dying because of that.
but is there is that one of the reasons? I'm just saying, I don't know that we could I don't know that we could suss that out. I don't know that any of us have the expertise to do that. But there is something to be said about the fact that people are trying to be healthier. One of the reasons why why seltzers became a big thing is that there's a perception of health in a clearer beverage. I believe that strongly. And I think that you have the perception of health. And I think that people are being more conscious about what they're putting in their bodies, even if it's misguided. So I would not be surprised if some of the continued downturn of chain restaurants is because of things like calorie counts. And but what I want to get to here is this. Even if it's a small percentage, even if we're talking about 10% of people or 5% of people, if 5% of people stop going to Buffalo Wild Wings because the food is too highly caloric, it's a massive hit to the bottom line. If 5% of people recognize an alcohol warning as being dangerous and stop drinking beer, right? They just start drinking something else or move on to THC drinks or whatever. That's a massive amount of people on top of the already downward trend. And that's the conversation I was having with my partner is that we already have a downward trend. Younger
Mhm.
generations are already not drinking as much. People are already talking about and cutting back. So if we've got a downward trend, and I'm making up numbers out of just for the sake of argument, if we've got a slow slope of a 5% decrease every year in alcohol consumption, and let's just say for craft beer, and and this happened, right? This Surgeon General's warning happened, and that cut in 3 more percent, a tiny amount of people, percentage wise, that made a difference. And all of a sudden, you have an 8% downturn for 1 year. That's huge. That's a huge amount of profitability being zapped out of the market and people turning away from it and less people being turned on to it. So it does not have to be everyone. It doesn't have to be a mass exodus out of the alcohol market to be a big deal.
So no, I think that's very fair, right? 3% doesn't seem. I still think that if you go 3%, you're going really large. I just don't think that there is anyone. Again, to go back to cigarettes, the statistics say that people didn't quit because that Surgeon General was the warning went on there. They went on there because of so many other reasons. If you're already choosing to drink alcohol, you know it's not a healthy choice. I don't think anyone assumes that this is a positive thing. I think like the whole. Do you remember like 10 years ago when Food Babe did this thing about how there's GMOs, and there's isinglass, and there's blah blah blah, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, my whole point was, oh yeah, so you're surprised that your intoxicant contains toxins? Do you not know? Like I don't think people are surprised by that. And we saw. I remember we saw in the brewery industry, people got upset for about 5 minutes, and then it rebounded just fine because everyone went, "Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I am dumb. Why am I worried about health when I'm literally drinking something that is negative for my body?" So 3%. You're right. Big in the grand scheme. I just don't think any warning on the side of a bottle. First of all, I don't know how many people don't even bother to read the side of anything that's on anything anyway.
But I just want to jump in there. So yes, it's the side of the package, but it's more the big conversation about it. We still have a culture that cherry picks information and
Mhm.
has been for decades that talk about how alcohol is good for you. Watch any morning television show. Don't do that. But if you would have for the past 20 years, they pick out every single example of how red wine is actually good for you if you drink 1 glass a day. The scientific consensus on alcohol for 20 years has been if you drink 5 drinks a week, drink 4. And if you drink 4 drinks a week, drink 4 drinks a week, drink 3.
Mhm.
Drink less. Period. There is
Mhm.
no amount of alcohol that is good for you. There are good things potentially in alcohol, but you can get them other places. And they do not counteract the negative aspects. They just don't. So
But
10 people,
anyone who cares about their health has been to a doctor in the same year,
but
and any
but
doctor has told them that it's not safe.
but
That's what
if
I'm
you
saying. If you care about your health, you go to a doctor, and your doctor has been telling you for 20 years it's
I
not safe.
I know people who are in the medical profession who don't really know how bad alcohol is for them and will tell me about studies where this alcohol is actually good for you when it goes against the scientific consensus. If we have a louder voice saying, listen, all that's bullshit. This is cancer causing and you don't want to get cancer. I have to believe that some people, maybe a small amount, will stand up and take notice to it because there is a difference between a Today Show spot and massive amounts of information being disseminated on social media. And we're hearing about it. I mean, my partner Keith, he like talks to other people. I don't know how that is. I've never done that. But he talks to like other humans out that are not his friends or not in his circle, and they're asking him about it. They're concerned about it. These are drinkers that are asking him questions about stuff. So it's becoming part of the conversation. Will it be muted? Will it be a huge ramp up in nothing? Probably. I believe that's probably the way it's going to go. But we have had consistent pushback in popular culture and certainly by the industries that make alcohol to tell us that this stuff is not as bad as we might think it is. And if there becomes a concentrated effort to reveal the truth, which I believe is the truth, as a heavy drinker, I do believe this is as bad for me as they say it is.
Yep.
And it's gonna and I haven't changed my habits, right? Not everyone's gonna do that, but it doesn't take a lot.
I mean, I don't know
What
how
are they
many
do?
people that felt like they needed to go gluten free call hazy IPAs their favorite beer. You know what I mean? Like wheat beers died because of the anti gluten campaign that happened 10 years ago. And then hazy IPAs that have just as much gluten in them took off because a lot of those people that think they were doing the right thing are just full of shit. Let's just be honest. They're full of
Of
shit. They
course.
don't, right?
They don't have celiac disease. Yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And my sister's a celiac, so I absolutely know it's a real disease. I'm not saying it's
Mhm.
not. I'm
Of
just
course,
saying that a lot
celiac
of
is,
people,
yes.
yeah. I but I just think, uh, man, again, I go back to smoking. Study for study showed that the Surgeon General's warning did nothing to curb that. It was the taxes that finally curbed it. It was the campaigns in schools that finally went to curb that. Because that Surgeon General's warning was on there our entire lives, guys. We didn't see a big drop in smoking until taxes went up and the anti-smoking campaigns in schools went up. It wasn't the Surgeon General's. It didn't. It did nothing when they put that on there. It was the other things that was the big thing. So if you want to talk about where we're concerned about is if the government's going to get controlled in taxing alcohol more as a sin tax, for instance.
Yeah. So to jump in, like I see absolutely both sides of this, and because what I think Kevin is really getting at here is like, yeah, the people who are deeply invested or just it's force of habit, part of who they are, their tradition, their culture, their whatever. It's not going to impact it. It's going to impact the people who are those impressionable, always online, gullible fucks who are just always looking for that something new that are like, oh, I didn't know this. I need to preach from the hills about this and let other people know about this for a week before they move on to their next thing that they learn about. And like Kevin said, could that potentially lead to like 3% of people changing their habits? That could be disastrous to some businesses. Maybe. I don't know if it will. Like the I think that the label, if it's done, will have a very minor impact on sales. Like really, I think that the only thing that would really get people to change a habit like that is complete outlawing of it, which isn't going to happen, or just medical emergency to where like they realize I do need to change my life drastically because of something that happened to them, a doctor getting through to them because of like, hey, this thing that just happened to you, it's going to keep on getting worse if you keep on doing X, Y, and Z. Like that's what's going to change people's minds. I really don't think that a label by itself will impact too many people.
No. So there was a 2001 study on the impact. So the Surgeon General's warning on cigarettes has been in place since 1972. And a 2001 study, right? So 30 years later, found that it had impact on the way people talked about smoking, but it had zero change in behavior. So in other words, smokers now felt socially shamed by it and they would hide their smoking. But as far as their decrease in smoking, they showed that didn't have any impact.
What about does it say any, now that's saying current smokers? Does it say anything about preventing people from starting? Did it do any? Does it say anything about that? Because that is kind of different.
Sure, but it's hard to measure that because how do you measure someone that
that's what I was just asking if the data had. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I don't think you can because you can't go, oh, let's measure someone who picked up a pack of cigarettes, read the side of the box, and then decided to put it back down.
It'd be a lot of surveying.
Well, no,
yeah.
I mean, so it's hard to parse this information out, but I think there are really interesting things that come out of that. You mentioned the shame. When I was talking with my partner Keith and talking about cigarettes, to me, and I have no data to back this up, I'm just talking about my personal experience and one potential avenue for this. Smoking started to be less culturally acceptable when less people started smoking, and you realized I dated nothing but smokers from the time I was like 16 through, I mean, my 20s. And I never smoked in my life. I've never been a smoker. I smoked like 4 cigarettes ever in my life. And I found the smell of cigarette smoke to be kind of gross, but I was still with people that smoked all the time. As the stigma of smoking became more and more prominent, and more ostracizing and more of you can't smoke in this place, you have to be outside, you can't do this, that, and the other. To me, that's what killed smoking, for the lack of a better term. That and secondhand smoke. The idea that what I'm doing to my body might impact you. I thought those two concepts are what were the most likely things that could have hurt smoking and really brought it down to insanely low levels. I mean, we've seen that drastic decrease, and alcohol does really not have that problem. You don't drink alcohol, and someone else doesn't get drunk, and alcohol is the most socially acceptable drug there is. So I think that's what alcohol has going for it.
Yeah,
The
well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
no, I was gonna say, well, a couple things that made me think about is, yeah, you're right. Once you made something less socially desirable, again, the warning on cigarettes was 1972. I moved up to Minneapolis in 2003, and there was still smoking allowed in bars. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was 3 decades
Oh,
before a Surgeon General's warning did something else. And again, the only reason it became illegal in bars is because it was hurting others.
yeah.
Right?
No, and
So it was a coordinated campaign across multiple avenues. And I think that's going to be the challenge, where I just don't think even the most aggressive alcohol campaign is I mean, you've had MAD forever, right? You've had
but
Dare forever.
But what I'm getting to, and by the way, whether or not it's that or something else, younger people are not drinking as much. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It's mostly because they're smoking pot, I guess, or doing edibles, whatever it is. But I think you also have to put into the effect is that we are not living in 1970 something.
Sure.
You could not go on Facebook and see what your friends were doing in 1975.
Mhm.
I think that the social aspect of this, and not in a way that is going to harm anybody else other than drunk driving, which, hey, by the way, can kind of harm other people. But
Mhm.
I think that the dissemination of information, sometimes false information, is so much more in people's faces now. It's not about what's put on the can that people are going to read. It's about
Yeah.
the memes that are being shared.
Yeah.
And if this idea captures the social zeitgeist and becomes something that influencers are harping on and people are virtue signaling about, I don't drink, I stopped drinking, I'm moving on to this. It could have the kind of effect. And I loved what you said earlier, Tim, about gluten sensitivity. Uh, yeah, there are still people that are talking about gluten like it's poison when it's all psychosomatic and in their brains. Electromagnetic sensitivity. People are freaked out and think that they are affected by radio waves and microwaves when they're
Yeah.
not.
But some of those have moved to the wayside, right? They were really hot, trendy things.
But they're still there. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
in pockets, and they're still influencing people. People are still terrified of GMOs like they're poison when
Yeah.
it goes against every bit of scientific understanding we have about agriculture
Yeah.
that everyone agrees on who is an expert on the field.
Yep.
But yet people are terrified and they shop at Whole Foods.
Which is not GMO free, by the way.
Well, and also, anyway, I'm not going to go down that whole rabbit hole. But
Yeah.
if it captures the imagination that this thing that was socially acceptable and so important to our culture becomes vilified, at least in a small segment of the population, that can fester. And I think that a brewery in 2025 should be aware of this. I'm not saying you should stop making alcohol and start making ginger beer. I'm just saying that I think that this could pick up steam to the point that it's relevant. Will it? Probably not, but it could.
No, I think that's certainly fair. Yeah, no, anything that could be a threat to the business should certainly be acknowledged and addressed. I think for me, where maybe I fall on a different line is, and I have the fortune of not being a brewery owner, just to fret and worry about every little threat to the business.
But if you were a brewery owner, you would have a boat, Em. Don't
Uh,
you want a boat?
God, do you know how many brewery owners hey, I told you every place that I've ever brewed at, the owners aren't even there because they needed to get out.
I don't have a
Uh,
boat and I'm there every day. I don't know what
yeah,
you're really talking
no,
about.
I guess for me, there are a billion other threats to my business. That one more label on the side of my can is not the thing that I'm going to be as worried about as all of the other threats to my business. Why people are drinking less, right? So young people are drinking less, and they're not doing it because there was a label on the can. They're already drinking less for other reasons. So what are the other reasons for that? 'Cause to me,
Health and social stigma. I
okay,
think it is.
cool. And so to me, this is an example of the tail wagging the dog. Rather than saying, hey, this is going to cause people to worry about health and social stigma. What I'm saying is health and social stigma are what's driving this change. So
Sure.
if we're worried about this, we really should be worried. To me, again, it's tail wagging the dog. Like if that's what you're really trying to get at, is like, and you're right. I'm never going to tell someone, you know what, drinking alcohol is healthy. I'm never going to say what we do. Again, if you're worried about toxins, you shouldn't be drinking an intoxicant, right? If I'm worried about safety, I don't go free climbing, or I don't go parachuting, or I don't like do so many other things because that's not why we take part in any of these vices. And drinking is a vice. Let's not pretend like it isn't. I think, and I'm not saying we should lean all in of, drink until it's dangerous. I'm not saying like do that, right? But what I am saying is, I think for as much as for instance, the cigarette industry has been crippled, people still do it because there's still a certain kind of, I don't know, there's still a certain
There will,
vibe, I guess,
there will
right?
always be people that enjoy it and come across it. I mean, there's a
Right,
segment of the population that's going to do that for sure.
right. But I also think if we just acknowledge, right? I mean, I think one of the things that the alcohol industry has had a hard time reckoning with is the whole idea of drinking in moderation or whatever. Um, I think there needs to be kind of a healthy balance between like, yeah, we recognize this is not the healthiest thing for you, but like, man, people got really carb conscious. I haven't seen Italian restaurants closing down left and right. People got really worried about sugar. Nestle still seems to be doing okay. I think we can find a place within there where we consider this an indulgence. We consider this like I hate to borrow the stupid Sam Calgione affordable luxury thing, but it is a luxury. Like if we find the right way into that, right? I mean, I would calorie counts on a menu are basically the same thing as saying, hey, this is unhealthy for you, this is unhealthy for you, right? And yeah, probably they've seen a dip. I think they've more seen a dip because of COVID. People remembered how to cook again. People learned how to cook at home. um I think the also the global inflation caused the price of goods to go up, and so restaurants had to get to uh their margins got even tighter, just as much as beer margins got tighter. I don't really think that had to do with the affordable. I really do not see the Affordable Care Act because that happened back in 2012 or whatever. We didn't really see the restaurants struggling until probably 6-7 years after that.
Mike, you got anything there?
I mean, everything you guys are saying is is is, is right. Um,
Thank
the
you. Good night.
just to like kind of go back to what I was saying, like I think that the label, I think we can all agree that the label probably by itself is not going to move a whole lot of needles. It would take a concerted effort of advertising campaigns, uh, and legislative changes to really change, I think, a lot of people and actual health issues to change people's minds on things of the ones who have already bought in. To the people who haven't, that I think that's a different discussion altogether. But I mean, to me, I to go back to something Tim kind of touched on was the stigma on our industry of like overconsumption is something that has just been sticking out to me for a while now. And it is part of the reason that I have changed parts of how often I drink. That's why I'm doing dry January for the first time in my life. And like reading about other people in this industry's experiences has changed my mind on a lot of things. It wasn't a label. Like I said, I know what is in this stuff, but real world experiences and seeing other people's experiences is what has changed my way of looking at things with this, and is changing my way of consuming.
I think what you mentioned there, Mike, is really important because influences abound, right? There is very rarely any change that happens for one reason. I'm not saying that people don't have a heart attack and say, well, now I'm not going to eat beef anymore. That happens. But if you look at the majority of people, the majority of situations, people make lifestyle changes and choices based on 1,000 different threads pulling on them at all times. And I think that we can sometimes, almost like wishful thinking, we think we can look at like one thing because that's what happens in movies. Like this one event happens and it changes everything. That's not the way life works. We are much more complex creatures than that. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. And, with that that being said, it's not an all or nothing proposition. We're not in a situation where a government warning or a social media campaign, not by a company, but by people, right? By human beings putting this information out there into the world. We're not in a situation where we're going to go from, you know, uh, 10 billion barrels of beer made to zero, right? We may go from a time of 10 billion barrels made to 9 billion, and it's still a thing, right? I think talking in binaries is what we're comfortable with because that's just kind of the natural order of things. It's what makes us the most comfortable. But these cultural shifts and these cultural changes for everything, for something like smoking, something like acceptance of other cultures and other ideas, they exist, and then they reach a breaking point where people are willing to engage in a way they weren't able to engage before, or disengage in a way they weren't willing to disengage before. And it takes a confluence of situations to make that happen. So I think it's a little bit of a folly to look at one thing and say that couldn't be the tipping point, because it could. And I think it's also a folly to be like, oh, well, this is going to be the biggest thing in the world. I do that all the time. I try to be a calming, reasoning person in my circle, because I think for the most part these are all bumps in the road. But you never know when that's going to take the entire thing off the beaten path.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. Like there are ebbs and flows. I think the one thing I'll say about alcohol is we've known for a long time that alcohol is not safe. I mean, we went through an entire period in this country 100 years ago where alcohol was completely banned, and it came back. I think the idea that societal pressure could take it off, absolutely. I think something like smoking, I think the biggest thing is that we understand the impact it has on others, that people that are just in the same room with it, that kids, like all the impacts that happen there. I think that's where the challenges are. I think something like alcohol, uh, you're right. There will be societal pressures on this, and this generation isn't drinking as much, and they have other options. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but we've been drinking forever, and we've known about problems with alcohol forever. And
Well,
yes, the industry is in a downslope. Longitudinally, are we though?
yeah,
Yeah.
it could be a lull before a massive spike. 100%. I think that's really important to put all this in perspective. If you look at anything, if you look at your business over 2 months, you
Mhm.
might be wanting to, pull your hair out. And then you look at it over 4 months and you're like, "Oh, we're back to where we were before." If you
Yeah.
pull out the focus on the graph big enough,
Mhm.
everything looks like a straight line.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really, really important thing to mention. Uh, my partner Keith made a really, not a
Keith has
brilliant
been
comment.
mentioned a lot on this
Well,
episode,
one because
probably more than he ever has.
yeah, well, because this was the conversation that sparked this entire the concept of talking about this in the show. But he said, people are always going to want to be altered. And he said it
Mhm.
like 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, "Man, that's true."
Mhm.
We are a species that has enjoyed our intoxicants, and we do want to experience that, and however it is. I mean, it's the reason why people are finding new uses for synthetic drugs all the time, right? So
Yeah.
I think that it is 100% fair that people are going to move on to the thing, either going to stay with what they're doing because they want to be altered, or they're going to try to, if they don't like that or they feel too scary about it's too scary, they're going to move on to something else that's going to alter their perceptions and get them in that feeling. I think that
Mhm.
there's no doubt that's not going to be bred out of human beings tomorrow.
I
But I will say, with that being said, there are billions, I would say, of people. I can't say billions because there's only like 8 billion people on the planet, maybe 9. There are hundreds of millions of people on this planet that right now do not think alcohol is bad for you, other
Mhm.
than the hangover they get tomorrow.
Mhm.
Hundreds of millions of people.
Mhm.
So we say, like, oh, we've known it forever. No, some people don't. Some people genuinely think it's good for you. Some people think it's a completely neutral thing. Once the hangover's gone, it's out of your body. It's done nothing bad and lasting. And if that perception for hundreds of millions of people is somewhat altered, that could be a big deal.
Sure.
yeah,
I mean,
and
I think we've also seen the opposite though. I mean, look at the acceptance of marijuana, right? There are no reefer madness videos going around anymore. There are no other, like, like your point of people want to be altered. I think we're
Mhm.
all just kind of shifting where
Yeah.
those things are, and that's why you see the industry going from. You and I talked about it last week about going from alcohol to THC. It doesn't mean it won't shift back, but at the same time, I think you know, but it reminds me of eggs, man. Do you remember like growing up? Eggs were good for you, and then they
what a
were
left
bad for
turn.
you, and then they were good for you, and they were bad for you. And I swear, between like 1985 to 1995, every other year, eggs were the worst thing you could possibly eat or the best thing you could possibly eat. Like it was all over the map for like 10 years of our existence. I think that's where a lot of this shit lies. I mean, I like obviously the stupid mantra of all things in moderation. Yeah, obviously, right? But I think
I'm glad that Tim finally got us on. It's been an hour, and we're finally on to a real conversation that we can have about those fucking eggs and how bad these bastards are, and the yolks. The yolks will get you, my friend. They will
it
get you.
It
So I'm
really it
glad.
really was, like, eggs were, like, the enemy and not the enemy of the enemy again in the '80s. Do you guys not remember this?
I do. I remember
I
it well.
don't.
There was a Simpsons joke about it,
Yeah,
about a person from the Egg Council coming, I believe, to the power plant and trying to convince people that eggs were good.
yeah.
Th There's always gonna be ebbs and flows about this, and I don't doubt it, and I think what you're saying, Tim, and I think, Mike, you're echoing this in some ways, is that we have to put all this in perspective.
Mhm,
We have to be reasonable about this. We have to
mhm,
not overreact. We
mhm.
have to look at this and say, "This is not an all or nothing proposition." That's where I fall on this, so unfortunately, we all agree. which is the classic United We Drink thing to do, where nothing ever gets solved. And
Well, that's
we
why
just
it's United.
Yeah, we United, we talk about how bad alcohol is for you. That would not be a good name for a podcast. But I think that we have to be careful about the overall perception of an industry that's already suffering,
Sure.
and we have to realize that if just talk about craft beer, if we're already on a sinking ship and the hole in the hull opens up another millimeter, we're going to sink a little bit faster. And we've talked about all the downturns of craft beer, and I could tell you guys about our numbers from 2023 to 2024, which were disappointing. And then I talked to other people in the industry, and they're like, "Oh, you guys did well. you were only down X percent. You guys were crushing it, because my other accounts were down much, much more." So if we're already in that environment, this is something I think we all should be clocking, all thinking about, and just kind of keeping our finger on the pulse, maybe following a few influencers on TikTok.
Well, no, and Mike, I hate to belabor a point, but he did bring up something that I really wanted to bring up that I thought about earlier.
I wanted to talk more about boats because
Okay.
I've always been told that rising tides sink all ships, right?
No,
That's
what
how
it is.
goes.
If they rise fast enough and aggressively
Yeah.
enough, yes.
Yeah.
And loose lips too.
No. What your point is, all finger on the pulse. I think the other question I have to pose to you gentlemen, right? So, Kevin, you brought this up because it seems like it's been something that you and your partner.
Oh, it's not multiple choice? Okay.
No. Kevin, you bring this up because obviously your partners. Jesus, Mike. I've talked about. It does not seem like it's made so much of a ripple here, and I'm really curious. Like, at what point does it get to be something that, and we all know how much I feel how ineffective, the Brewers Association is, and how they could be pulling their resources and so many other things that would be helping small breweries, and how misguided their focus is on a lot of things. And I'll tell anyone, I've told people at the Brewers Association this, but at what point is that something where the Brewers Association should be more effectively lobbying for?
For some reason, when you said that I told people in the Brewers Association, for some reason I was picturing like a ransom style note where like you were cutting out letters from magazines and sending them to the Brewers Association. I don't know why. I feel it could be a threatening person. You're so friendly, but I don't know. I'm just telling you.
I just meant more like conversations at CBC or things like that.
I'm just telling you where
I like that idea,
where my
though.
mind went. I'm just telling you where my mind went immediately. I think that one of the saving graces for this industry is the fact that there are billions and billions of dollars behind it. I think it's that Budweiser and Miller Coors, or Anheuser-Busch and Miller Coors, or InBev and Miller Coors. Sorry, I got there eventually. I think that they exist, right? So they are going to fight this tooth and nail. They would fight anything like this, and they're going to put out campaigns about special trace things in alcohol that are actually good for you when they might not be, but they're going to say it. And because of
they'll talk about their workers, like these are their jobs, and this is our communities, and all of that.
And I think more than anything, they are going to donate to the right political campaigns. Let's be honest. They can put out all the PR they want. If they put the right money in the right coffers, that is all that really matters.
Yeah, but it's also not just them. It's also the wholesalers. Like the distributors have huge lobbying powers in their states. Like I'm sure they do in Minnesota. Kevin and I know firsthand they do.
That's why it took us forever to get Sunday sales.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we still have. This is why we could still only sell like 2 6-packs at a brewery to you. Yeah.
What I told my partner Keith, that's going to end up being a thing where you ring a bell every time I say it. But what I told him was, how many restaurants would not be around if they couldn't sell alcohol?
Yeah.
Right? Or if alcohol sales dipped 25% for a chain restaurant in Florida that I will not name, they'd probably go out of business. Right?
There are places that go out of business in Minnesota because they have to have, in certain neighborhoods, they have to have 55% food sales, and they can't even do that.
the dominoes will fall and destroy a lot of the economy if alcohol sees a much steeper decline in sales.
Yeah.
So there's so much motivation behind keeping this thing as part of our cultural norm. And that's why I think it's probably going to survive pretty well. I just wonder, when you start trimming at the margins, who do you trim first? You trim the small independent craft brewery. When you start trimming at the margins of restaurants, you trim independent restaurants, right? So I just think it's that when I say that, that's one of the things that we should clock and we should be thinking about. That's more what it is. In the very same way, George Carlin said, we worry about saving the earth. We worry about saving the earth. The earth is going to be fine.
It's the
It's
people.
it's gonna shake us off like a bad case of fleas. The earth is gonna be fine, right?
Yeah.
It's the people that are fucked,
Yeah.
as you just said, Tim. Well, alcohol is gonna be fine. It's the small independent craft brewers that could be fucked if we see a serious downturn in what alcohol consumption is for the country. And I thought it was an interesting discussion. I think we had an interesting discussion about it. I don't think we came at any conclusions because that's not what we're here for. But that was kind of what I was getting at. At least that was where we came in our thought process internally at our brewery.
Yeah, I just because I'm contrarian, Kevin, doesn't mean that I don't hear all the points that you have to make. Like I really appreciate everything you had to say. And it does give me more thought about it. I mean, I'm still right.
Tim said something nice to me. Can you mark that down?
Timestamp that, yeah.
And timestamp the time Tim said something nice to me, because it's the first time. It's really good. No, I'm happy. And also the fact that he says that he's right, and the fact that I agree with him means he also said that I was right. That's what you call a double whammy.
Yeah, no, I mean it is a good conversation, and you're like any little crack of the surface. I mean, boy, you want a more blatant example of that? I've got a tiny little crack in my windshield, and I turned on my defrost the other day, and I have to get a new windshield now. Like literally,
Safe Light repair, Safe Light replace.
yeah. Well, Safe Light repaired or Safe Light replaced my windshield in September, and I have to get a new one again. So I'm gonna have to fight with them over whether this is covered under warranty or what the.
And by the way, that's the next episode of United We Drink. We will be talking about Safe Light and Tim's experiences henceforth.
Yeah.
Year 2? I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, no, good conversation. This might be one of my favorite episodes, to be quite frank. Mostly because Mike was
relatively quiet and just. I had some jokes that I wanted to fit in there, but I couldn't because I didn't want to interrupt. But no, you guys talked some good game today.
I feel like Mike. I feel like Mike.
I don't know what to do when I'm not drinking.
This is a good reason why alcohol is going to be pervasive, guys.
So I'm now, like, we're recording this on the 15th, so it's been 15 days of me not drinking, and if I've lost 10 pounds in this period of time, which is awesome. I feel like I have a little bit more energy. I feel like I'm sleeping a little bit better. But one thing that I thought might change from this is that, like, maybe my irritability would go down, but that hasn't changed. So I've realized now I'm just an irritable person, whether alcohol is involved or not. So
I could have told you
that's
that.
a little depressing.
Yeah, I've never done dry January, but I have a couple of times done a month off at a time. I think at one point I actually went I maybe didn't make it close to 2 months, but I did go over a month once without alcohol. And you're right. You know what? I slept a little bit better. I lost a little bit of weight. Wouldn't say I was any happier. That was maybe the most depressing realization. Like, I don't want to be like, hey, you know what? I need alcohol to have a good time. But it's like also like, you know what? I don't have any better of a time when I don't have alcohol. like maybe that was the thing. I don't know. That's not a lesson coming up of the alcohol isn't good for you conversation we just had. But
So I did not drink at all during my wife's pregnancy. I did not drink in solidarity with her. So that's over 9 months of not drinking,
that's
and
impressive.
I really enjoyed it. I never woke up with a hangover. I felt some of my best peak physical condition I had been as an adult. And then the second that our son was born, I went right back to drinking. So it just goes to show you that even though all the positive things happened, I still said, yeah, I can't wait to have that first glass of wine. I
He
can't
was
wait to
in
have
the
that first beer.
delivery room and he all of a sudden had a beer in his hand and the doctor's like, sir, where did that come from?
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
where did what
So
come
it,
from?
Yeah,
like,
it's like
has he
whatever.
come yet? Is he here? Is he here? Did he
Yeah,
come out? Is he out? Okay, good.
give me those things. I'm cutting this umbilical cord. Turn it into a beer bong. Yeah, no, well, to me, like even what I learned from that, right, is like when I got back to it, it's like I wasn't. Like, I'm not even like worried about like I'm not suffering from hangovers. I'm not drinking enough where I'm getting hangovers. It was just more just the yeah. It was fine. It was good. I can live without alcohol. I just also enjoy alcohol, right? Like I can live without a lot of things that I enjoy.
It's that go back to the thing that Kevin was talking about with Keith is people want that
Bing.
feeling.
Yeah.
What was the exact wordage that you used?
Altered. We
Yes.
want to be
Yeah.
altered.
And I don't remember if I talked about this on the episode that we did about THC drinks, but like it's a thing that has made me more conscious of those drinks is like, hey, if I can take that, have one of those, maybe two if I build up the tolerance to it, get a little stony in the comfort of my own home and it doesn't hurt my fucking liver.
Mhm.
It doesn't add a whole lot of empty calories into my body. Like that's something to seriously consider for me because I do like from time to time, well, not even from time to time, I like that altered state. Which is the
I,
name of a tattoo shop around here.
I mean,
But
yeah, no, I think there's something to be said for the fact that there's always, and I'm not trying to make a false equivalence here. I'm really not trying to make a false
that means
equivalence
he
here.
is.
I am that I am. No, but the reality is that we all, I mean, think about people who are dependent on caffeine in the morning, right? And people who quit caffeine get headaches. And I'm not saying that getting your caffeine jolt is the exact same thing as being drunk or being on THC. But the reality is everything, even just the sheer act of eating, creates chemical changes in our neurophysiology. I think the idea is for us to deny the fact that we as living organisms that consume chemicals for us to survive mean that you go without food, you go without water, you get delirium, right? You go like we all have different mental states based off of what chemicals are in our body. And it's just a matter of how extreme that gets. And sure, alcohol, THC are a lot more extreme than water or food or caffeine. But the reality is we all crave some chemical change that causes an imbalance one way or another.
Chemical changes that make you happy. Chemical
Yeah,
changes that tie to a time and place
yeah,
that
yeah,
that give you some kind of feeling of euphoria.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I agree completely. I have come around to those THC beverages spurned on by our show where I became nonverbal, and
And that was fun.
yeah, it was great. Uh,
It was
and
fun.
and thankfully, I never have to listen to that because I would be embarrassed. but that's
You weren't bad, honestly.
that's actually like my resting state is embarrassment, so that's fine. But I do on a regular basis sub out THC drinks now,
Yeah.
and I really, really enjoy it. It's something that I'm looking forward to. Actually, after I get off this call and we end this show, I'm going to have 3 milligrams of a THC drink and watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and wind down for the night. And I'm going to really enjoy that.
Boy, my plan was to take 4 milligrams and watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So this is kind of right up the same alley.
We're pretty much the same person.
Well,
Yeah,
I
pretty
don't
much.
have any of those in my house right now, so I'm not going to take any of that, and I don't know if I'm going to watch anything after this because I'm kind of tired. But
Yeah. I'm gonna just do codeine and watch The Sopranos and hate myself.
all right, I think this is a good point to head into last calls. First last calls of the year. Is the point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beverage related or not. The only rules is that it is unopposed, unobjected, and uninterrupted. I'm going to start things off. I was going back and forth on what I had two things that I really wanted to talk about, but I'm gonna go for the negative one here. Um,
Bold choice.
I can have the positive one for the next episode because it'll still be relevant. So we over at Copper Point, where I am employed, we're launching a new brand, a new IPA called Everflow. Really excited about it. A new IPA that is juicy in flavor, but not a hazy IPA. It is something for us to get out there back into the market with our IPAs. Our IPAs that we've had on the market for the last few years have had declining sales, and it's not for a lack of trying, but a red IPA and a West Coast IPA really weren't things that the market were demanding and wanting. They did okay, but in the last few years, it's been declines, and because of that, we needed to change something up, or you perish. So one of them, our red IPA, is now going to be a taproom exclusive. Only we're just going to be doing 20-barrel batches of that just for in-house, and our West Coast IPA that was called High Ridge is going away. It's actually as of right now, it is gone. It hasn't been in our tap room for a week or two. And this upsets a lot of our regulars. And I don't think any regulars of ours listen to this podcast, so whatever. But they have a connection to these beers that is fine, is valid, it's great. I'm glad that you love those beers. But that they are so adamant about that they shouldn't go away, when it's like, I get it, but it didn't sell. You love it, awesome. It didn't sell. I like both of those beers. I would bring cans home regularly to drink, but I'm a man of numbers, really, when it comes to production and distributing products. Is if it doesn't sell, it should go away. I'm sorry that there's absolutely people who like it, because the sales weren't at zero. That means people did buy it and people did enjoy it, and that's awesome that you did. But man, if you want a company like us, a small company like Kevin's as well, you have to understand, if we are to continue to make products that don't sell, that have losses year after year, the business goes away forever. Then you don't have anything from this business that you say that you love so much. So how about, instead of being upset and for longer than a couple days, I give you time to mourn. I understand it. Trader Joe's has discontinued so many products that I like a lot. But you know why they discontinued them? Not because they fucking hate me, but because they didn't sell. I mean, they fucking hate me, but they also didn't sell. So, like, get on board with this new beer. If you don't like that, I'm sure you can find something else that we like. I know a number of the people who like this beer and are upset about it drink other things at our tap room. So it's just being dramatic for the sake of being dramatic. If you are in Florida and you see our new beer Everflow out there on tap and soon to be cans, cans should be out probably by the beginning of February. Please try it and let me know what you think, because this is one that I'm super excited about, because we are partnering up with the Friends of Jonathan Dickinson Park in Hope Sound, Florida, helping raise awareness for them and funds for them. Because they are an amazing state park and they need our help. And this whole brand is geared towards the wild and crazy environment that we have down here. This ecosystem in Florida is unlike anywhere else in the entire world. And we commonly only look at Florida as beaches, fishing, surfing. But when you go inland and go to the natural areas, the Everglades, the pines, there's so much awesome, cool stuff going on there, and we need to keep as much of that going and alive as we possibly can, and that's what this beer is all about. So yeah, I made that somewhat of a compliment sandwich, so a good thing. Yeah, drink Everflow. Stop being upset when companies cut things that don't sell. Tim?
God, I hate when you do that, because the whole point of this segment is that it's uninterrupted, unopposed, unresponded to. Because
You guys always respond. We always respond after we get off air anyway.
I know. I have so many things.
Just showed people how the sausage is made.
I know. I just wanted to respond like here on all of that, I guess, is more than anything, not to oppose it in any way, shape, or form. No, for me, this probably carries over to before the holidays. Kind of some of the things I was saying as we got into our episodes about being thankful and everything. Guys, the holidays, they fucking suck. Some people love the holidays. I do not. And it's not because I'm a Grinch. It's not because I'm bah humbug. They just bring up a lot of things for me that are not comfortable and not happy. They stress me out. They take my so I already suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, and they raise it up to 11. And I suffer from major depressive disorder, and that brings it down to negative 11. And it's just it's terrible. And I did not have a good holiday season. Things got pretty dark for me. They got pretty rough. The past week or so, it's gotten a lot better. Last night, I was able to hang out with some people that kind of reminded me that things were good. Last week, I got to hang out with these two gentlemen online, and kind of reminded me what things are. And I tell you what, I since since you two gentlemen and I met, since Kevin and Mike and I met online a week ago, I've just kind of been in a better mood, and it's just been really excited to be able to get back and doing something like this. Man, this is fun, right? This is an opportunity to spend an hour just bullshitting with friends, and I mean that very sincerely, right? Like, these guys are my friends. It's awesome. I know that I can and we do text each other outside of this. This isn't just like we only get together for this. This is why it sounds like three chimps on a Davenport, to to borrow a Wayne's World reference. But the reality is that it's because we all generally like each other. And man, sometimes it's just good to have friends. Uh, Mike made a joke about all the jokes we make when we quit recording, but that really is some of the things. We could go. Kevin and I talk for like 20 minutes after, and those are the things I treasure. And so just remembering that you have friends that are out there that maybe aren't like the friends that are next door, or the friends that are gonna respond immediately, or the friends that can come over right away, but like the friends that you can count on, or the friends that you can talk to, and just connect with humans that are going to forgive when you're an asshole, which I've been. Um, ah, Man, that's what's exciting, and that's like I'm really excited for 2025 United We Drink, because I'm really excited for like our planning session that Mike was so good to organize for us to actually pretend like we're like a real grown up organization. It was kind of fun to see, and to actually talk about what we want to do and get on the same page. And man, just the way we play off each other when we're not, we might even be better not recording than we are when we record. Um, like it is so much fun. So for me, I guess my last call, to sum it up in a nutshell, is uh, uh, thank you for getting me out of the holiday funk. I was not great in the holidays, and you two gentlemen have made me infinitely happier. So thank you both. So
You're
Kevin,
welcome.
top that.
I can't and I won't. I'm gonna go in a whole different direction because that's appropriate at this point. But thank you very much, Tim. I'll also say, not commenting on your last call because I can't do that. I had some real dark moments this holiday season. No need to go into it right now, but I had a tough time. One of the more tough Christmas times have experienced in the last several years, and it's not your experience. It's not any of our listeners' experience, but it's not just you. Many of us struggle from day to day, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to not be okay. So that's just the way it is. But it's also okay to talk about something light and stupid in your last call. And a show called What We Do in the Shadows wrapped in, I believe, October, November. I forget when the last show was actually aired, but I was catching up with it on Hulu. My wife and I, we don't get a chance to watch TV like we used to together because I have schoolwork. I'm in school full time. But so we finally caught up on it. I don't know if there is a dumber show that I've enjoyed more over the run of it than What We Do in the Shadows. I mean, it's a stupid conceit about the mockumentary about a bunch of vampires, but it just works. It works on every level. The the brilliance of the writing and the characterization is fantastic. I love that show. I really looked forward to every single season. And I will just highlight Matt Berry as Laszlo. I could hear that guy read the phone book and just be happy because he puts like enunciation points on syllables that don't make any sense, and it just makes me smile. And the character that played Nadia, I mean, all the main cast, their accents are just perfect, and they, even in the most mundane jokes that are mildly funny, they make them hilarious. So, What We Do in the Shadows, if you've never watched the original movie, which was fantastic, check that out. The TV show on FX/Hulu is just brilliant. It's so good. There is so many great bits. One of my favorite moments over the holidays, because we were catching up on some TV because I was not in school. My wife and I were just laughing out loud at joke after joke in a way that was just so joyous. And it's difficult. One of the things about like being in a movie theater with a bunch of people, comedy club, is that you'll laugh out loud because you're with a group. But the smaller the group is, the harder it is to get that infectious kind of laughter. And there's just such joy in that style of writing and what they were trying to accomplish. They stuck the landing, they nailed it. It's just a brilliant show. And it's not like The Good Place, which is my favorite television show of all time. It's not Parks and Rec. It's not like one of these like touchstone cultural television shows, but it deserves its own category for just being a joyous expression of fun and lunacy that I think people should experience. So listen to the ridiculous accents, enjoy the show. It's fantastic.
I'm not commenting on Kevin's thing as much as I really want to. I'm commenting on Mike's face while listening to that because the sheer, just sincere smile and like joy on his face as he listened to you describe that, Kevin, warmed my heart.
I mean, getting Mike to be sincere, I mean, that's like pulling teeth. That's and by the way, that's not true. Mike is actually the most sincere person I think I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, he cares maybe a little too much.
No, Mike sometimes is my North Star. He cares a fuck ton about a lot of things. Even
Tim's the
things
one
that
from Minnesota, so he should be a North Star.
See? And he's quick too. See that?
Neil Broughton. For some reason, that's who I think of when I
Are you
think
gonna
of
say that's
North
who you went
Stars.
to out of
Neil Broughton.
all of them? That's
I
the one.
don't know why.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it's a fucking great show. Anything that you want to plug, Kevin?
Please go to Barrel Amongst social media accounts, follow us, and see the things that I do with my videos about Old Favorite Friday. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, you like classic beers, I talk about them. Maybe it's boring. Maybe it would be better if I had these two guys with me, but it's something I really care about, and I'd love for you to check it out.
It absolutely would be better if we were all there, but it doesn't mean that it's bad already as it is. Things can always be better.
The only problem is putting up an hour and 30-minute video on YouTube and also on Instagram would be difficult. The algorithm
be.
doesn't like that. Doesn't like it.
Fuck algorithms. Tim, you want to plug anything?
What is this? The 15th, so this will be out on the 22nd, 23rd.
23rd. Yeah.
23rd. Okay, perfect. So if you're listening to this the morning of the 23rd and you live in New Orleans, do me a favor and help out two friends of mine. One, Scott Wood of Courtyard Brewing, who I think Mike, you might at least know from the social media.
I know Courtyard, yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
I've never had any of their beers, but I'm well familiar with Scott and Courtyard.
Okay, so a coworker of mine up at Rapids here in St. Paul, his band Runaway Ricochet, they're ska, whatever, more than ska, but ska. They're actually playing at Courtyard on the 23rd of January. So it's kind of a fun little confluence of things for me. So if you're listening to this morning on the 23rd, and you are in New Orleans, go to Courtyard tonight and go see Runaway Ricochet. Tell Jason, the trombone player, that I say hi. Tell Scott I say hi. You're not going to get anything for it, other than probably a sneer or a scorn. But still, go check out both of those things because both those people are very helpful. Scott was very helpful through my divorce, and Jason has been helpful through my onboarding on this company. So take care of both of them, please.
I don't really have anything that I want to plug, so I'll just do the stuff for the podcast. If you want to follow our show on social media, we are at United We Drink on Blue Sky. We are at United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads. We're also on Facebook. Our website's unitedwedrink.com, and you can listen to us on all of the major podcast apps, like I said at the beginning, and just in general, shout into the ether, say, hey, play United We Drink, and someone somewhere might play it for you.
What's our GeoCities page?
Oh, it's geocities.com/ UWD underscore 1997 slash index dot HTML.
Does it
Thanks
have a
for-
GIF of Calvin peeing on a Bitter Units logo?
Yes.
I'm just glad you brought back 1997 from earlier in the conversation. That's called a callback, and you did a good job.
Thank you everyone for joining us in this first episode of 2025. It's going to be a year. That is the most truthful statement about what we're in for. So we'll be back here in a couple of weeks with another new episode. Thanks everyone once again, and cheers.
Happy to be back.
Thanks, guys.